In this video, I'm making a crazy charcuterie board out of scrap plywood.
Thanks for clicking play and welcome to my bomb shelter basement workshop, where today I've decided to clear out some of my scrap wood. I'm going to start with the plywood and then figure out some other projects to use all the rest of my scrap wood. The reason I'm starting with the plywood is because of this thing right here. Now this is a pizza board that I made about a year ago, maybe longer. There'll be a video on the screen somewhere, but I think it looks awesome. I used super scrap plywood and you just end up with all these crazy patterns everywhere. You don't need to come up with a design, you just cut and stick stuff and it looks awesome. But then hanging right next to it is this thing, which doesn't look awesome. Now technically, I would call this a cheese board, but when I looked online, it seems it's more popular if I call it a charcuterie board. So I want to make a matching set. Now I have been gluing and sticking little bits of plywood here and there from offcuts of projects, but I'm also going to use scraps like the prototype from my pen stand, and then I've also got some offcuts from my camper van. Just basically whatever's on my shelf and whatever works. So I'm going to start with a lot of chopping and sticking and chopping and sticking.
I've definitely got enough wood to start making the charcuterie board. Charcuterie? But it looks boring. Whenever I've done these ply scrap wood pieces in the past, there's loads of interesting bits, but on this one, there's just a load of straight lines. There's not enough zigzags and wee-wahs and all that jazz. So I'm gonna do more chopping and just make it look a bit more jazzy, a bit more chaotic. Technically, I had enough wood to start the charcuterie board, but I also have a habit of getting things wrong. So I grabbed an offcut from my slide-out campervan desk and decided to make some backup pieces. Very glad I did that because now we've got some different pieces and some different colours. This stuff here was offcut from my campervan desk that has been in the van for like a year and a half. This stuff here is from the prototype pen holder that I made a few videos ago, and it's a totally different colour to the new stuff I've been working with. I definitely have enough to start putting the charcuterie board together, but some of them are still rough and uneven. They're all different heights, so I'm going to trim them all to the same size. Hopefully that should save some time. Now that they're all trimmed, it's time to start figuring out which pieces are going where. But I'm going to start with the handle first. And that's because on one of my chopping boards last year, I went to put a hole in the middle, but when you're working with scrap plywood, it makes the outer sections weak by doing that, and the end of it snapped off. So I'm going to run two pieces of very thin plywood right down the centre, giving the entire board structure, and giving the handle structure so I can stick a hole in it and hang it up neatly. I was hoping for once I'd be able to do one of these glow-ups and it'd be perfectly straight, but it's not. When I was cutting the pieces yesterday, it did feel a bit weird. When I was gluing it up, I was struggling to get the pieces flat, and then when I was editing some clips last night, I found out why. This plate thingy on my table saw is terrible. When I was cutting the blocks, as I was pushing them, that was flexing and they were tilting in at an angle, so none of them are straight. But it doesn't affect bigger pieces as much. So once it was all glued up, I was able to trim it completely flat using the table saw, which means I won't need to router it. I've remembered why I haven't done one of these in a while. Because instead of just sticking the scrap wood together and being done, I tried to make it look as crazy and as wild as possible, which means sticking, cutting, and it ends up taking forever. But hopefully it'll look really cool. So I've got enough for the final block. I'm not going to stick it all together in one go, because I used to do that in the past and it'd go wrong. So I'm going to stick a few more sections together, and then I should be able to attach it all in one piece. It's the final glue up. That's right. It's finally all stuck together after multiple cuts and glues and cuts and glues. It's solid. This is a very random charcuterie board, so I'm going to give it a very random edge. I've never done that before. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to put my jigsaw blade on an angle and just start attacking it. First sound done, and it's looking very cool. We've got some really interesting patterns going on, but we also have some gaps being exposed. It is cheap scrap plywood, so that is to be expected, but before I go any further, I'm going to plug as many of these gaps with sawdust and glue as I can. Now that all the big holes are filled in, I'm going to give this a very thin layer of epoxy. Some people say that you shouldn't use plywood for anything that food's going to go onto because the glue they use in plywood is dangerous, whereas some people say it's fine because it's already dried. But just to be safe, I always use food grade epoxy to seal the board in a way. I watched a video where it said the epoxy sinks in, gives it a nice protective layer. I don't know if any of that is correct or makes sense, but that's what I'm going to do. Now that it's dried, you can see it's not shiny like epoxy should be. It's got kind of a matte effect to it, and that's because it's soaked into the wood. There's a few areas that are a little bit shiny. Now I'm going to get some fine sandpaper and make it silky smooth. It's all super smooth now, even if I did mess up the hanging hole a little bit. So, now we're going to give it some chopping board oil.
This might be my favorite thing I've ever made. I don't know why, it's just so cool. But let's talk about the bad things before I tell you how good it is. The hanging hole is horrible. I don't know what I was doing there. I think I should have just gone straight through with a router bit and made it super clean. The layer of epoxy resin, I would normally give it 2 coats. The first one seals most of the holes, so a second coat makes everything perfectly smooth. I didn't have time to do that. There is a few small sections around these corners that aren't perfectly smooth, but apart from that, it's amazing. I love it. The hand section I crafted perfectly. It's got more of an indentation for the thumb on the left, and then it's shallower on the right, so that when you grab hold of it, it's like a perfect grip. The crazy edge I gave it by angling my jigsaw, it looks awesome. It looks like a live edge or waney edge, whatever you want to call it. And then the patterns. The straight line down the middle that was there just to give it support looks super cool. It breaks up the pattern. It's almost like Go Faster stripes. There's this little bit around the handle here. I don't know how that happened, but we've got these 2 straight pieces of a different color. And then the dark plywood. Originally, I was going to cut it into chevrons. I didn't have enough, so I made this weird pattern. Then I cut it in half. Like, it looks like they're supposed to be all one piece with 2 random bits in the middle. It's awesome. Love it. And then because it's at like curvy angles around the edge, we've got these weird circles forming. My videos aren't how-to videos, but I really hope someone watches this one and goes, that's easy, I can do that, and it looks really awesome. Like, I couldn't have designed that pattern. I just chopped and stuck stuff together until it ended up looking cool. So yeah, if any of you have had a go at something like this, or you are thinking of having a go, please let me know. I would be really interested to see other people's results or experiments. So if you've watched this far, thanks very much for watching, because I think this is an awesome video. If you've got any tips, questions, or suggestions, stick them in the comments below. It would be awesome if you could subscribe, and I will see you in the very next video.